Warning! This show contains material that some listeners may find troubling, including discussions of intense horror movie themes, explicit language, movie spoilers, and women speaking. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, horror fans. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Eleanor.
And welcome to Horror Sandbox, the podcast where we dig around in horror films and see what we can unearth.
Yup. Before we get started with today's movie, Charlie, how are you coping with the horrors?
So, I just got done with a little vacation for the first time in 3 years, I think. My husband and I, we just took a little solo trip down to Atlanta and then into the mountains of Georgia, and we stayed at like a spa and resort and just drank champagne and got massages and slept, and it was fantastic. Somehow I came back from this vacation more tired than I have been in the past 3 years, but I think it's my body was like, oh my gosh, you finally slept, let's keep doing that. But yeah, it was really nice and relaxing and a great coping. And the other thing is, in the mountains of Georgia where we stayed, to tie this to the horrors, there's all this like Bigfoot like artwork on the buildings going up. Unfortunately, we did not see Bigfoot in the mountains, but
I love that you saw tributes to him.
Yes, we saw his tributes, and we could have seen Bigfoot or some skinwalkers maybe. I think it's like skinwalker country in the Appalachians, but unfortunately didn't see anything. But what about you? How did you cope this week?
So it was really nice yesterday. I took my littlest two kids to a park and just let them go nuts, and they did. And one of them suggested shoe shopping, which is kind of unusual for children. But I was like, you know what? You have a point. So we went shoe shopping and then went and got ice cream. And there is at the place where there's ice cream, there's also another park. So they got a bonus park and they had the best day ever. And it was so nice.
That sounds like such a nice like spring day. Just go and get ice cream and hanging out at the park.
Oh, yeah. It was delightful.
Nice.
All right. So what are we digging into today?
Okay, so today we are doing the 2016 film Don't Breathe. The IMDb summary for that is 3 delinquents break into a house of a war veteran who is blind to steal his money. However, they discover that the man is not defenseless as he seems. And the director of this movie is Fede Alvarez. The writers are Fede Alvarez and Rodo Seagüez. And it's starring Stephen Lang, Jane Levi, and Dylan Minnette. And yeah, so now let's get into our Bloody Shovels Awards. What is your Bloody Shovel Award for this movie?
I know the one that everyone who has seen this movie wants me to say, and I'm not going to say it because no, just no. I'm going to say, I think this is the best execution of a gunshot to the throat scene. Pun intended.
Beautiful.
And we will talk about it because I thought it was very well done.
Yes, that's a great bloody shovel. Mine is the best fake out death. Really, in fact, I've watched this movie twice and I forgot about it, and it got me 2 times. So best fake out death, and we'll talk about it when we get there too.
Very good, very good. One thing I also want to say is I know we don't often do trigger warnings, but this movie and parts of our discussion will include themes of sexual violence. We're going to try really hard not to be too graphic, but this movie does have a pretty disturbing scene, and if you've seen it, you all know exactly which one I'm talking about. Charlie and I will also talk about the use of sexual violence in horror films more generally, so if that's not your vibe, please just protect your mental health and catch us next time.
Perfect. All right. So let's dive into the plot. All right. So the movie starts with an overhead shot of a rundown neighborhood with sirens in the background. And then it slowly zooms in on a man dragging a woman down the street. And then it cuts. And we get The first real scene where we see 3 individuals break into a nice house. It's 2 men and 1 woman. We find out later that their names are Alex, Money, and Rocky. Alex and Rocky strategically steal stuff, while Money just randomly breaks stuff and pees everywhere, which, like, okay. And then as they leave, they throw a rock through the window to set off the alarm. And at first, I was like, is this scene just trying to show us that these people are idiots? But it does kind of, you understand later why they broke things when you find out how they got in the house. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because they have a discussion about like, oh, let's make sure we keep, the total of our haul can't be more than $10,000 or whatever the amount is, because they're trying to keep it below the penalty for felony larceny.
Yes.
Which is like, oh, okay, like you're trying to make sure even if you did get caught and arrested for it, it's not gonna make you a felon. But then they're just like trying on clothes and spreading their DNA all over the place, and it's just like, okay, what are we doing here? Are you clever or not?
Right, which, like, I don't know if they're just thinking like, okay, we've only stolen so much, so the police aren't going to waste their time doing DNA samples on this. But still, it's pretty ridiculous just peeing all over someone's house.
Yeah, that's true. And we should probably say, they do kind of hint at it later, but just to explain what happened, when we watch them break in, they actually use a key. Like, they have access somehow to get in and disarm the alarm. And then, which makes it look a little bit odd when they leave and they throw a rock through the window to set off the alarm. But it is part of how they're trying to hide their tracks.
Exactly. So we then go to the next scene where Rocky's in a car with and she's looking at a ladybug on her hand. And then they talk about how Rocky and her boyfriend, Money, want to run away to California and never come back. Alex says he won't go with them, and Rocky says, I'll miss you then. After that little car ride, Alex goes home and looks for his dad. And when he realizes he's not home, he goes into his dad's office and he opens his safe and he puts the keys from the house that they just robbed back into the drawer. So this is a moment where we realize that Alex's dad owns a security company, and Alex gets the keys and the alarm codes for these houses and then breaks into them. So the smashing of the window is to be like, we didn't come in, knowing how to get in, so that they can't tie it back to his dad.
Right, which on the one hand kind of makes sense. On the other hand, those alarm systems have logs and show you when somebody last disarmed the system.
That's so true.
So I don't know if maybe they're just banking on, well, we didn't take that much stuff and they're probably not going to pay that much attention, or if it's an older system and he had like a way to override it. I don't know. I definitely thought about that while they were kind of revealing that method.
That's so true. Especially when they use the like master clicker thing. You should know. I'm sure there's a way to track that, but who knows? Like you said, maybe it's an old alarm system. But okay. Then it does a cut to a scene where there's Money and some strange man in the back of a van in a garage. And Money's getting paid for some of the stuff that they stole, but he's not getting as much as he wants. And the guy in the van says, well, if you want money, then steal money, which the writers of the show clearly wanted, or the writers of this movie clearly wanted no one to be able to summarize the plot, because it's just money. One's a person, one's an item. I'm so sorry if it gets confusing, but I don't know how else to handle it. But okay, so the guy in the back of the van gives Money an address of a house, and says the person who owns it is an old vet, and that his daughter got run over and died, and the family responsible for it paid him off. So they think he has at least $300,000 cash in the house. So Money goes back and he tells this plan to Alex and Rocky, and Alex immediately reminds them that they don't do more than $10K in cash because it's major larceny. Or felony larceny, which means they can get up to 10 years in prison if they get caught. And Rocky says, well, they won't get caught. And Alex says, well, they could bring it back to my dad because they're going to actually investigate it. And Alex says, no, I won't do this, and walks away.
And it's funny, too, because they're having this entire conversation in a restaurant of some sort. Like, yeah, okay, it looks kind of empty, but like when they walked in, were they just like, hey, can we get a table for 3 under the name criminal conspiracy that we're about to plan? Because it's just like out there in public. It's a bold choice.
It is bold. I didn't even think about that. And you're right. There's like nobody else around, but it is just in the middle of a restaurant. And obviously Money is not quiet. Like he basically yells out this entire thing. So, but yeah. And then so after that, it cuts to Alex in his house, just sitting on his bed, and he gets a text from Rocky that says, "I need to get out of here. Please do this for I need to get her out of here. Please do this for me." And Alex then he looks up the address on the computer and sees that the vet did in fact receive a six-figure settlement for the death of his daughter. And then he just says under his breath, "All right." So it did not take much. Alex has already given in to the plan. Then it cuts to Rocky's house, and we find out who she was referencing. There is a little girl named Diddy there, a guy named Trevor, and Rocky's mom. The mom and Trevor are sitting on the couch. They're smoking, they're drinking, they're being crude. Rocky asks if Trevor's going to live there forever now. And her mom responds he is until he finds a new job. She tells Rocky to order some pizzas, and Rocky says her mom has no money. And her mom says, "Well, you pay for it. I know you're making money." And then she makes a really crude joke insinuating that Rocky is a sex worker to get the money that she's getting.
Yeah, this movie does a really good job of making me hate Rocky's mother and whatever her loser boyfriend is immediately.
Yes. Oh, yeah. She's obviously not a great mom in any way. I mean, Trevor's just clearly a run-of-the-mill scumbag, but yeah, her mom is awful. So after that, Rocky decides to take Diddy for a walk because, again, her mom is awful. And Diddy says she wants to go to the beach and be a surfer, and Rocky reminds her that there's no surfing in Michigan, which, by the way, this movie takes place in Detroit, Michigan. And Diddy's clearly upset. So Alex texts Rocky back in that moment and says, "Let's do this." So Rocky bends down to Diddy's level and whispers in her ear and says that they should move to California with her and they can surf there. And Diddy says, "Yeah, let's do it." So it cuts to now the crew staking out the neighborhood of where the break-in is going to take place. It is a super bleak, rundown neighborhood. All the houses look like they're abandoned, except the house that they're going to rob. It's actually a pretty nice-looking house. It's upkept pretty well. It's old. Had these houses in this area been maintained, they would have been really pretty, but most of them crumbled or got destroyed.
Yeah, the contrast is super interesting because the rest of the neighborhood looks entirely abandoned. Like there's some houses that are literally overgrown with trees, like coming through, the porch or whatever. And then here's this very tidy, very well-kept house.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely like, obviously, this is a house that is the only one that has someone living in it. And after they check out the house, it cuts to Alex and Rocky in the car, and it shows that Rocky got a new ladybug tattoo the night before, which if you're robbing houses to make a living and run away, why are you spending money on tattoos? Anyway, I mean, it's little, but still. And Rocky says she got the tattoo because her mom started drinking when her dad left, and her mom blamed Rocky for that. And Rocky, when she was a kid, she missed her dad a lot and she cried a lot because of it. And when her mom got fed up with the crying, she would lock Rocky in the trunk of a car for hours, which, holy cow. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, just horrific levels of child abuse that we're talking about here. Like, she's the worst.
Yes, the worst. Like, it's just awful. And Rocky says while she was locked in the trunk, there was a little hole. And one time a ladybug flew in through the hole and kept her company and made her feel safe. So then she says when she reaches California, she's going to color the tattoo in and then never mark her body again. And then Alex says if they get the money, he's going to go away with her and Money, the human, when they go to California. And then Money comes back from scouting and he says no one lives within 4 blocks of the house, which means no police will come. And I just want to say this reminds me of the meme, call an ambulance, but not for me.
Oh, yeah.
If you've seen the movie, you know why. Okay, so Money reports back from his scouting, and he says that the guy that they're robbing is a shut-in, and he hasn't left his house in 5 days. So they say they have to do it with him in the house, and they'll just get a chloro bomb, which I've never heard of. But we find out later that it's a bomb that I guess just like releases some sort of gas into the air and knocks people out and makes them sleep without killing them.
Which I feel like if Money was really good at making those, he probably could have been making more cash. Like,
That's true.
Like on the black market. He apparently knows a guy, so like, come on.
Right, exactly. Use your skills, man. But he's clearly not the smartest person.
Grind set mindset.
Yes. And Right after he says chlorobomb, a dog, a big Rottweiler, jumps on the window of the car and a man whistles the dog back. And we see that the man is the man that owns the house, and the crew notices that he is blind. So Alex has a little moral setback and asks if it's fucked up to rob a blind guy. Not if it's fucked up to rob a retired vet whose daughter died, but blind is taking it a step too far.
Yes, the answer to all those questions is yes.
Right. Money says, we're going to do it tonight, and pulls away in the car. So, cut to the break-in. It's 2 a.m., and they're walking up to the house with flashlights, and they debate if the lights in the home of the blind man are off because he's blind or if because he's sleeping. And they say they have to take care of the dog first, and they approach the house and go through the side yard and give the dog some kind of treat that puts it to sleep, which I will say, this stressed me out at first, but then when I saw that they just make him fall asleep, I was very happy that they didn't kill him.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything kill-worthy yet, so I get it.
Yeah, no, not yet. He's just being a dog. So they go and they bring the key to the front door, but they realize that there's 4 locks on the house and they only have 1 key. So Rocky suggests that they check for a side door. Money goes into the backyard to make sure the dog's asleep, while Alex looks in barred windows and tries to kill the alarm, but he can't see and it's not working. They can't unlock the side door and they can't get the basement door to open either because it's shut from the inside. But Rocky notices like one of those really high up bathroom windows that she can fit through. And so she has Money lift her up into it and breaks in while the alarm begins to count out.
And like, I gotta say, the audacity of smashing out a window of a blind man's home in a silent neighborhood. There's like, especially when I know that they have that little tool from his dad's office, like the magical alarm shutty off remote thingy, which is indeed the technical term. But even with that, just to smash out the window, create a lot of noise, and jump through a bathroom window like that, where you're going to make a lot of more noise, and that house is quiet, and that entire neighborhood is quiet. So there's no covering the sound.
Right.
But this scene was also cool because there's a shot of a tool room, and there's a very deliberate shot of like a mallet or a hammer. And it might as well have been winking at us with how much it's going to come into play later, but I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. Like you see it. And it's funny, like I said, I've watched this movie twice now, but the first time was a couple years ago, and it zoomed in on that mallet, and I was like, obviously that's going to get used, but I couldn't remember when. But yeah, you're right. It could just wink at you. But okay, so Rocky starts to go through the house and she's looking for the alarm and she shuts it off just in time while she's scattering random shards of broken glass around the house. While she's looking around, she sees a photo of a young woman, which I think is the man's daughter, on the fireplace mantle, and one's turned upside down.
Yeah, which I assume this was just like, hey, he's blind, so maybe some of his pictures are upside down because if he knocked them over, he'd put them back the wrong way. I don't know. But also, I noticed that there are some like dried older flowers kind of sprinkled around the frame, and those actually come back later. I'll point it out when we get there.
Okay. I don't know if I even noticed the flowers, but yeah, I thought too that it was probably just that showing that he is indeed blind and couldn't tell which way was up with the picture. So back outside while Rocky is doing all of this, Money tells Alex to chill out, and Alex tells Money that he clearly doesn't care about Rocky at all because Alex is stressed that Rocky's inside, and this makes Money mad, and he tells Alex to back off and to stay in the friend zone where he belongs, and right when it's about to escalate, Rocky opens the door and lets them both in.
Yeah, let's just do some token male jealousy while we're trying to focus and rob a house. Like, come on, what are you doing?
I agree, the tension there was not needed. However, I will say Rocky definitely chose the wrong man, but that's besides the point. So they go inside and they take their shoes off, I assume to be quiet or to not leave prints, and they begin to search the house for Money. Not the person, the actual thing. However, the person, Money, is an idiot and turns all the lights on. But the thing is, like most blind people can still see to some extent. Like you can tell if the lights are on or off. This guy, I hate Money so much.
Yeah, especially when the term blind gets used, like there's legally blind and then there's different levels of vision impairment. Like it's a little bit of a spectrum, I believe. So yes, very, very wise decision to turn on all those lights.
Right, exactly. And then he continues to make wise decisions by stomping up the stairs as loudly as he can.
The camera work in this scene when they're first in the house. I loved it. It's not very busy. The camera is kind of tracking each individual character in like these sweeping angles. And for some reason, that's very nerve-wracking because you watch one person walk and you're kind of following them and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. And then it'll switch to another character who's looking around, and it builds like a lot of tension with very little, there's no music, there's no eerie, visuals other than people creeping around in a dark house that they don't know they lay above. And then when Money is going upstairs, it actually pans up through the second floor and you can see the subflooring and the space between. And then you also see, when they're doing one of the sweeps, you see these bells that are coming from the ceiling above one of the door frames. And it doesn't look like it serves a purpose, but that comes back later. And then we also, when it's panning up to the second floor, it shows us a man sleeping in his bed, and it shows us under his bed and there's a gun strapped to the frame.
Yeah, I will say the tension building in this movie is really well done, especially in this early shots. And I think I do like that it went through the subfloor, because I almost think it kind of shows like how the noise will travel through the floor and like how there's a gap of air and like you can hear everything. It does a really good job of building that tension and putting you on edge.
I didn't think about the noise traveling, but that makes sense.
Yeah, at least because, I mean, they make it very apparent, like, to hear the footsteps throughout the movie, because just like that's how the blind man is hearing these people move around in his home. So, like you said, while Money is going upstairs, he turns a corner and he hears like eerie music or singing or something happening down the hall. And then it goes into the blind man's room. And on his TV, it's a video of a little girl playing in the yard, which is actually kind of sad. So you can assume that the blind man falls asleep to like old videos of his daughter every night.
Yeah.
And you see photos of a man in his uniform as well.
Yeah, and it looks like the uniform, I thought it was from the first Gulf War. I didn't get a really clear visual of it, but that's what it looked like to me. And then he's got a Purple Heart medal draped over one of the frames, which, for listeners, if you don't know, Purple Heart is it's a medal that is given to service members who suffered an injury during wartime.
Right. After it pans over to the blind man, he hears something and he sits up in bed and turns the TV off, and then there's a really tense moment, and then he lays back down. And when he lays back down, Money gets his little chloral bomb ready and then gasses the guy, he says, and leaves thinking the guy is now asleep. And then the overconfident Money continues to loudly scream "done" as he walks downstairs, and they notice that the basement door is super locked up, and they assume the Money is down there. They can't break the lock off the door no matter how hard they try, so Money pulls out a gun, which nobody knew he was bringing with him, and Rocky reminds him that he's literally never shot a gun before, which, like, way to be a career criminal. I'm not a career criminal and I've shot a gun. Like, come on.
Like they had that whole planning meeting in the cafeteria. Like, why didn't they bring these elements up? This is piss poor communication is what it is at this point.
It really is. The teamwork here is lacking on all levels. And rightfully so, Alex is freaking out because obviously your burglary charges go up insanely if you have a gun. Also, it gives the owner of the house a legal right to shoot them. So Money proceeds to not listen and shoots the lock using like a water bottle as a silencer. And Alex is like, I'm done here. And he leaves.
The internet is super conflicted about whether or not a water bottle would work as a silencer. I'm pretty sure that it definitely won't help you much in an otherwise completely silent house in a completely quiet neighborhood where you're trying not to wake up the dog and the man you just drugged asleep.
I agree with that. Again, we know Money's not smart. He's also never shot a gun. He probably did the quickest of Google searches or like heard through the grapevine that a water bottle works. But because when he shoots it, you do still hear it in the movie too. So it's not like it's silent. It's just Money being an idiot yet again. So, however, shooting the lock does work and they open the basement door, but then the blind man comes around the corner and asks who's there. And Money starts talking and he pretends that he's the only one there and he was a drunk and he just wandered in. And it's working for a second until the blind guy notices that the lock fell off the basement door. And so Money realizes the jig's up and he tells the blind man he knows what's in the basement and that he should do what he says.
And you don't know it as you're watching it, but we soon learn what's in the basement, which means when he says this, the veteran blind guy is thinking that he's talking about the person he kidnapped. Which
right.
unbeknownst to Money, he has just escalated the stakes of this, which makes the blind guy's actions make maybe a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I think so. Not that I would ever defend the blind man in this movie, but yes, it does make his actions make more sense, and the fact that he can't let Money go. So the blind man approaches Money, and Money fires like a warning shot past his head, and the blind man like takes a moment to channel his inner zen and then attacks Money. And there's this really tense scene where he like slowly turns the gun towards Money. And you know what it made me think of was a scene from, I had it and I forgot it. Dang, Saving Private Ryan. That one where the guy slowly gets stabbed in the chest. Do you know which scene I'm talking about?
I think I remember it, yes.
Oh my God, it's the worst. It's, I think, the worst scene in any movie ever, with like the scene in this movie being a close second. Anyway, so he asks Money, as he's turning the gun to his head, he gets it finally pointed towards Money, and he stops and he asks Money how many people are in the house. And Money actually is honorable here and says it's only him, so he doesn't rat out his friends. And for a second, it looks like he's gonna let Money go, and then he shoots him in the chin. And somehow Rocky manages to stay quiet as she's watching all of this and slowly like hides in a closet while the blind man freaks out.
This scene, here's my bloody shovel. I think it's really brutal and very well done, and yet somehow kind of clean and not very gory.
Yeah.
When he shoots him in the throat, everything kind of freezes. It does that fake out thing where you think he's going to let him go, and then it does that kind of freeze, slow down thing. And then the shot is illuminated by the muzzle blast. And then most of the blood that you see is like sprayed on his teeth. So it's not super gory. You don't have like I think you can probably see where like the exit wound should be, but it's not very gory. It isn't a lot of blood. You have a close up of Money's face and the blind guy's kind of like the side of his head or whatever. And then you see that muzzle blast and you see blood on the guy's teeth. And it's just like, you know, he's dead. You see him realize it in his eyes, but it's not gory. And I thought it was very well done.
It is cool. I think it's well done too. And it's like the only scene I can think of where you actually see the light from the muzzle blast and it slows down like that. It is a pretty cool and well shot scene. And I do like that you don't like see directly into where the bullet comes out, the exit wound, but you see enough.
And it's interesting because the muzzle blast in this case serves a purpose. Like a lot of times when you see muzzle blast in movies, it's like an after effect that is just added to make it look cool. Like it doesn't really do a lot. In this case, it does something. It shows you that it's a mortal wound, and it brings an intense spot of light to an otherwise very dark scene.
Yes. Yeah, it is cool. It's well done. And so Alex hears that shot and decides, well, he needs to check out what's going on and make sure Rocky's okay. So he slowly creeps back into the house. And as he's doing that, he almost runs directly into the blind man.
This is another scene that's just incredibly well done and terrifying, because you're looking at Alex, and then all of a sudden the blind man comes barreling down the hallway, and he just barely grazes him, or could have grazed him. He was so close, and it's its own kind of jump scare, but it's not done with like a big, loud crashing noise or anything like that. And then also, did you notice Alex had his eyes closed? Like he realizes he's being passed by the blind guy, and he like pins himself against the wall and closes his eyes. Like, that's not helping, bro.
That's true, but I didn't notice that, but I've had that reaction to scares before. Like have you ever been in a close wreck, like, or a close accident or whatever, and like right before you crash you just close your eyes real tight because you just like don't want to believe it's happening, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, but no, I agree. Like, he should probably keep his eyes open and maintain essay on the situation, but he does not. But the blind man also doesn't run into him, and instead, he finds some of the broken glass on the floor, so he knows that someone's broken through the window. And he must know that the only window that could be is the one in the bathroom. So he knows that there's more people there, and he begins to lock the house from the inside and then boards up the window. And then Rocky makes a very bold assumption that Alex's phone is on silent, and she decides to text him that the blind man shot Money and that she's scared, and she asks Alex for help. Alex lets her know that he's returned to the house, and Rocky tells him that she's hiding in the closet. She tries to crawl out of the closet, but then we have another one of those scenes where the blind man just aggressively comes around the corner holding the gun, and then he proceeds to open a safe in the closet above Rocky and we realize that there's money in there, and he's making sure that the money hasn't gotten stolen.
And it is interesting that he checked on the money first, right? And then he didn't go to the basement, especially when Money said, Money brought up the basement saying that he knew what was down there. So the fact that as soon as he killed the only person he thought was in the house trying to rob him, he doesn't check on the girl first. It's the money.
That's so true. And like, he killed the person that he thought is in the house too. So it's not like that he knows, even if he did take the money, it's still somewhere in the house because he killed him. So why wouldn't you go look at the girl? That is an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know. But
it works out for Rocky because she sees the safe combo numbers.
Exactly. She sees the safe combos, and then the blind man does decide to go down in the basement to check on the girl that is down there. So Alex comes out of hiding, and he finds Rocky and sees Money's dead and starts to freak out. And he finds Rocky and he says, okay, we need to leave and come clean to the cops. But Rocky just shushes Alex, and before she forgets the safe combo, goes and opens the safe and then starts stealing all of the money, which they said is probably closer to $1 million, I believe. It was more than they originally anticipated. So Alex remembers that the basement door was bolted from the inside, so that's their most likely way out. And as they're headed down towards the basement to get out, the blind man yet again comes very aggressively through a door, and it looks like he's coming out right at Rocky, but he's not looking for Rocky. He starts to drag Money down the hallway while Rocky and Alex watch. And Alex is an idiot and decides to take a step backwards, which alerts the blind man that he's there. And so the blind man starts waving the gun around, and then Money's phone goes off, it starts to vibrate, and the blind man shoots at the phone and then turns it off and proceeds to drag Money down the hall. So Alex and Rocky take this moment to sneak into the basement, which has a ladder with no stairs, which I thought was weird.
It is weird.
Yeah. And so they climb down the ladder, and it's pitch black down there. They're using their phones as light, and then Alex's phone dies, so he's without a light. And it cuts back upstairs to the blind man, who somehow smells their shoes from across the room and goes and checks them out and realizes that there are 2 more people in the house.
They must have stepped in Cujo's shit, like
that, or they just haven't changed their shoes in years. They must really stink. But yes, dog shit would do it too. And then so when he realizes that there's 2 more people in the house, he goes and he checks the safe, and he realizes that all the money's gone and freaks out. So it cut back down to the basement, and Alex and Rocky continue to explore it, and we get a jump scare of a woman lunging at Rocky, and this lunge causes the bell upstairs to ring.
Yeah, and this is the one that the camera was showing us earlier that didn't seem like it was relevant to anything.
Right. Yeah, because I saw that one earlier too, and I was like, okay, it's not like a trip bell, but turns out it is a trip bell for the woman in the basement. And she's been kept in this very strange, like, padded cube. It's literally padded with like various couch cushions and really bright lights. And he's put like live plants all around her. So it seems like he's trying to keep her, giving her some fake light and plants and things. But it's just very strange.
Well, I think I'm like 90% sure that those plants, they have these little red flowers on them. I'm 90% sure those are the dead ones that were arranged around his daughter's photo.
Oh, my goodness. I did not notice. I wonder what kind of flowers they are. Now I'm going to have to look that up to see if there's any significance there. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So the woman who lunges at Rocky then begins to kneel down and begs Rocky and Alex for help. Instead of helping them, they just slowly back up and run away from the woman, which I think is wild. They didn't even look, because at first it just seems like you could untie her. We learn later that she's locked up, but I would have at least like taken the thing off of her mouth. Like, to just run away from this woman, terrible. But Rocky realizes what they're doing is awful and slowly goes back to the woman and sees that she's holding up a newspaper clipping, and it's about the man's daughter dying. And Rocky makes a connection that this woman must be the one who killed the blind man's daughter.
Which I have so many questions. The first of which is, how the hell did he kidnap her? Like, if this is the woman that accidentally killed his daughter, how did he get her? Like,
That's true. Because he's blind too. He's blind when he got her.
yeah, he was blind when all this went down. Did he have an accomplice? I know there's a sequel. I haven't seen it.
Me neither.
And there's rumors about a third too. So maybe all this
wow.
gets revealed.
We'll have to look into it. Yeah, that's interesting. You're right. Like, how did he get her? And then also, like, wouldn't his house be one of the first that you check? Like, who would want this girl dead? Maybe the guy whose daughter she ran over. Anyway, regardless, this woman is down in this basement and has been for quite some time. And then instead of promptly saving the woman, they waste time arguing about whether or not they should save the woman. And they decide it takes too much time to save her and they're just going to leave and go call the cops. But the woman points to a safe next to her and you can hear the blind man quickly coming down the stairs towards the basement. Rocky remembers the code from upstairs and tries it on the safe, and it works. It opens up, and magically the keys to the woman are there. So Rocky goes, and she unlocks her, and the woman stumbles forward. It's obvious that she hasn't walked in a while, or at least not walked far, and she leads them to the door out of the basement. Alex can't open it, and he's fumbling with the keys, trying to unlock it as the blind man's getting closer, and he finally does open it. But when he does, shocker, the blind man is there waiting for them and shoots Alex in the ear and then continues to fire a couple more shots. And it kind of pans out. So at first you don't know who's been shot and who hasn't. But then it comes back in and it shows Rocky looking at the girl who was in the basement, who I believe her name's Cindy. And we see blood slowly start to come out of her cheek. And we realize that she's been shot in the face and she dies. Alex and Rocky run while the blind man shoots at them. And then he comes down the stairs and realizes that he has killed Cindy. And he starts sobbing and saying, "My baby," and screaming, "No, no, no," which I think is really creepy.
Especially because I think this is the most we've heard him make any vocalizations at all at this point.
It's true. I don't think he's talked up until this point.
I think
it's not very much.
Because he asks money, how many there are, and something like that, and like who's there. Like he has said a couple of things, but this is the most we've heard him so far.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, so it's really weird. And then he closes the basement door and grabs a screwdriver. And as he's grabbing the screwdriver and doing all that, Alex looks down at the key ring and notices that the ring matches the locks on the front door. So he tells Rocky they need to get upstairs, but the blind man is locking the basement with a padlock. So they start to run, but the blind man shuts off the lights. So now he has the advantage.
This is another scene that I think is just really beautifully done. It's in monochrome, so it's not like night vision effect or anything like that. But it does a really good job of building tension, and it's just a very clean and good, dark scene or nighttime sequence. And then at one point in this part, you get a close-up of his scarred eyes in the dark, and it's just it's bone chilling.
Yes, yeah, all those close-ups of his eyes are really, kind of creepy. And I do think like the actors do a good job like stumbling around with their hands out, trying to figure out like where they are in the dark. It's very real. And I feel like we've all been somewhere where it's just been pitch black and you can't see past your nose, and just that feeling is really ominous and creepy. But yeah. So Alex and Rocky stumble around in the dark, making a lot of noise while the blind man hunts them. And Rocky, unknown to her, slowly approaches the blind man and is about to run straight into him. And then Alex calls her name, and the blind man shoots at him and finds Alex. But he's out of bullets, so he can't shoot him. So he tries to strangle Alex, and it's pretty brutal. Well, Alex begins to beg for his life, but Alex manages to push the shelves back and knock the blind man over. And right after that, Alex and Rocky find each other and make their way out of the basement. So as Alex and Rocky get upstairs, they find themselves face to face with the dog, who is now...
He's like, "I'm back from my nap."
Yes, thank you for the nap. I am here. So Alex hands Rocky the keys and tells her to go to the front door, and he's facing off against a dog, trying to keep it calm and saying like "good doggy" or whatever. However, and it's working. He's holding off the dog, but then the blind man knocks aggressively on the basement door, which sets the dog off. So Alex begins to run, and right in the nick of time, Rocky opens the door and they sprint upstairs into a random bedroom, and all the windows are boarded up in this bedroom as well. So the blind man comes upstairs and he grabs his gun from under the bed, and Alex tries to set off the alarm from up there, and Rocky stops him because she's worried about getting arrested or losing the money, which, like, girl, You should be worried about dying.
She's gonna sunk cost fallacy her way into an early grave, I fear.
Yes, for real. And to prove a point, the blind man shoots into the room, and Rocky sees a vent up in the corner. So Alex tells her to go, and she climbs into this vent while Alex holds the door shut. But the blind man is able to break into the room, and the dog knocks Alex out of a window, which I have to say, if the windows were that easy to knock out, like, they maybe should have tried that a little harder first.
Serious ventilation problems here too. Like his heating bill must be insane.
Oh, that's so true. But so yes, as Rocky's climbing through the vents, she tries to find a way out. But the dog comes through the vents as well and chases her through the shafts in the wall. And she jumps down this hole. And it makes a big like noise, and it distracts the blind man, who we see the blind man is standing right under Alex, who is laying on a glass ceiling window.
Yeah, it's like a sunroom or like a screened-in porch kind of a thing, glassed in, whatever. So that the top of the structure is made of glass, like a greenhouse.
Exactly. But the noise of Rocky falling in the walls makes the blind man go away, and then Alex wakes up and he slowly starts to roll off of this glass that's splintering, and then somehow the blind man is upstairs, and I thought he shot Alex in the chest, but obviously he misses him, and it just shoots the glass window that Alex was laying on, and he falls through into the house.
And this movie just does not give you 1 second of a break. Like, you don't get to catch your breath. Like, basically as soon as they enter the house, it's just, it goes up to 11 and never backs down.
Never backs down. It's just constant movement. And it is like, it's hard to describe it too, because it jumps from like Rocky to Alex to blind man. So like they're all over the house just constantly, and the scenes just like jump from one person to the other, which, speaking of, Alex then grabs the alarm thing after he falls in the house and tries to set off the alarm again, but the blind man stops him. And Alex runs away, and he tries to hide in the tool closet, but the blind man finds him, and they proceed to have a horrifically violent fight here. And Alex does a damn good job of trying to survive, but he does get knocked out by the blind man and then stabbed with hedge trimmers. R.I.P. Alex. So we cut back to Rocky waking up in a random hole in the wall, and she finds a grate to the outside actually and kicks it out and is about to leave. But then the blind man hears her and grabs her through the ceiling and rips her down into the house. He takes the bag of cash back from her and then knocks Rocky out. So at this point, Rocky is knocked out, Alex is dead, money is dead, and it cuts to Rocky waking up in the basement, tied up just like the lady who was down there before. And Rocky proceeds to beg for her life and tries to tell him that she understands why the blind man captured Cindy and she won't tell anyone. And the blind man proceeds to tell her that she understands nothing, she's never had children. And Rocky says that none of this is going to bring his daughter back, to which the blind man says that's not really true.
Which, even if you don't know what this scene is setting up, that is a terrifying response to what she said about his daughter not coming back.
That's so true. Like, you don't know what's about to happen, but it's like, oh gosh, what do you mean? So the blind man then proceeds to tell Rocky that Cindy was pregnant with his baby, and that Rocky had killed both the baby and Cindy by breaking into his home. So now she needs to be held accountable for their deaths. Back upstairs, it cuts to Alex, who is beat to shit, but he is actually alive. We realize that the blind man actually stabbed Money's already dead body, and this is my bloody shovel. Because I was really sad here, because I was like, oh man, Alex fought so hard, I can't believe he died, and then he's back. But I really did believe that he was dead there. So
it's super well done, and I really love the twist. I also did not see it coming the first time, and I love that it logically makes sense for what the characters are doing in the movie. Like, it's not like, because you see this all the time in horror movies and a bunch of action movies, a character gets shot or stabbed or hit and it looks like they're dead, and then you cut away from them, and then later they just pop back up and they're bloody but they're fine somehow, even though well, you would have been bleeding more. I feel like you get less fine over time, not more. But in this, it's not that they didn't try to be like, oh, he just got better from his wounds or he was stunned and now he's fine. It's like, no, somehow in the chaos of that very violent fight, the blind man actually stabbed the body of Money and
Right.
didn't realize who or what he was stabbing because he's been stacking bodies all night.
Exactly. Yeah, it is cool. It is a nice little twist because I had that thought too. I'm like, there's no way you're coming back from head trimmers in the chest, but they didn't go to Alex. So Alex steps out of the room and is smarter now and traps the dog in the little tool room there. So, and then it cuts back down to the basement where the blind man is disposing of Cindy's dead body in some sort of like vault of black liquid, which it's got to be concrete, I think, under his subfloor. Like he's just slowly burying her in concrete and then covers her up with a floor thing.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it just looks darker, I think, because of the lighting. And then back upstairs, Alex starts locking and unlocking doors, trying to get back to the basement. And then the blind man starts to cook something. And this is the scene. This is a scene that, if you've seen the movie, is awful. He's having a conversation with Rocky about how there's no God. And he says that he never raped Sydney. He didn't force himself on her.
Yeah, he says, I'm no rapist. And you can hear his nonverbal but, and he sure as shit sounds like a rapist to me.
Yes, without a doubt. So he said that he promised to set her free once she had the child, which even if Cindy agreed to it, maybe that's where he's thinking of it. He's coerced her. It's just, this whole thing is gross. Anyway, and which I will say also here. So he promised to set her free, but he also built a murder hole in the basement. So is it true? I don't know. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I don't think most houses have murder holes in them. Not anymore, anyway.
Not modern day, though this is an old house. But no. I don't think he planned on letting her go. But he then proceeds to raise Rocky up with a pulley system, and she's stuck there kind of like laying on her back but suspended in air, and he proceeds to cut her pants open. And I just hate this scene so much.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's so gross. And then he grabs a literal turkey baster and fills it with a semen and says there's nothing a man can't do once he accepts the fact that there is no God.
Which... excuse me, leave pagans and atheists out of your nonsense, you weirdo rapist.
That's so true. Like, that. What a false statement. Like, you don't have to believe in God to be a good person. Anyway, so Rocky screams and begs him to stop. And he says, you're going to breed well because you're so strong.
Which is, again, a very rapey, rapist thing to say, Mr. Raper.
Yes, he's so gross. And then right before she's basted, Alex comes out of nowhere and hits the old man over the head with the mallet from earlier.
Chekhov's hammer mallet thingy.
So he knocks the old man out but doesn't kill him. And then he lets Rocky go, and Rocky proceeds to beat the shit out of the old man and then turkey bastes the back of his throat and asks him how it tastes.
It's so gross. Oh, it's disgusting.
It's so gross, but it is kind of satisfying, but it's so gross. And the noise he makes when she shit.
Yes.
Everything about it is awful.
I can't. Oh, God.
No, this whole scene, I hate it. I hate it. Anyway, so they grab the money after all of this happens and then again debate on calling the cops or not. And Alex tells Rocky it's her choice. And it appears Rocky chooses not to call the cops and they go to finally leave the house. And Alex gets the door open, and right when he's about to take a step out, he gets shot by the blind man. And this time Alex is actually dead. So R.I.P. Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a bummer, but at the same time, he did let money corrupt him and all that nonsense. So anyway, Rocky opens the door and proceeds to sprint out of the house, and the cockiness continues throughout the movie where she stops, turns around, decides to yell at him that he's worthless out here, to which he does not respond, but promptly releases the dog to chase her. She then runs from the dog and finds her way into an abandoned car, but she's stuck in the car, the money's outside, the dog's standing on the windshield, and she has nowhere to go. Alex turns around and has a callback where she remembers the many hours that she spent trapped in a trunk of a car and starts to tie like a rope pulley thing to the trunk of the car and opens it up. She baits the dog and it jumps inside, and Rocky closes the trunk and locks the dog in there but the dog breaks through the back seat, and Rocky proceeds to punch the dog in the face and then hooks it up with a rope, which I will say I think this punching a dog in the face rivals the punching the stone vampires in As Above, So Below, which also rivals the punching that happens of the old lady in Ritual. So just good punches all around.
We're gonna have to start logging these things for you.
Yeah, we'll have to keep track. Punch count.
Yeah. I also like this callback to her like childhood trauma and abuse. Like the fact that her telling that story earlier actually came back, I thought was well done.
That's true. It was well done, but also I found it to be a little cheesy, but well done. But she gets out of the car and grabs the money and pauses again right before the blind man knocks her out yet again.
This one, and this fight scene is also really brutal. This one in the laundry room scene, it shows you how incredibly violent the blind man is. Like he's punching and choking her, and it's really visceral. And especially if you know anything about statistics on crime and strangulation.
So strangulation is it's really gross. And I agree that this scene is just really violent and unsettling. So after he knocks her out and does that, it cuts to the little bit of the opening scene where the blind man's dragging her down the street. And he takes her back into the house, and Rocky is laying there exhausted on the floor, and she looks over and there's a ladybug on her hand. And then the ladybug flies away, and it pans to the master alarm trigger thingy just laying there on the floor next to her. So Rocky finally grabs it and sets the alarm off, which, like, I wish we would have done that 2 hours ago, but then we wouldn't have had a movie. So the blind man freaks out because he's very hearing sensitive and freaking out and just can't tell where she is. And then cut to basically and then I started blasting meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He just starts.
It is almost literally that, yes.
Yes. He just starts shooting everything in the room, and it goes through like the photos of his daughter, through the window, just everything. And Rocky comes back with a crowbar, and she's about to go in for the kill of the old man. But she pauses, but right after she pauses, he loads one more bullet in. So Rocky does finally hit him over the head with a crowbar and beats him up until he falls back into the basement and shoots himself. In the fall, like accidentally shoots himself. So Rocky grabs the cash off the floor and runs away while we hear the cops approaching. Okay, so the final scene, Rocky and Diddy are sitting in the airport while Diddy's coloring pictures of her and Rocky on the beach. And Rocky looks over and she notices a news report on the TV about a break-in that happened. And it is the break-in that she was a part of. And the way they're covering the story is that it was a blind vet's house and the blind man's stable, and he'll be released from the hospital soon. They say that he was able to defend himself and kill all of the people who broke in. So it seems that the blind man has agreed to an unspoken agreement where he won't mention that the money was stolen if Rocky doesn't mention that the blind man kidnapped and impregnated a woman. And the movie ends with Rocky and Diddy walking out of the airport holding hands. And that's it.
Oh, what a journey.
Yes, what a journey. So, Eleanor, what do you have for me about this movie?
So I want to know first, what was the first time you saw it, what was your overall reaction? Like, how did you react to it?
I remember thinking it was really tense in the beginning, like you said, and I thought it was really well shot and it was a unique movie about a break-in, but it definitely felt like thriller or whatever. And then they go in the basement and I was just like, what is happening? And just all of it was unexpected, and it was just a wild ride. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I think I saw this in theaters when it came out, and I remember seeing the trailer. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a thriller. It's about a veteran. He's blind. He's going to get targeted by these loser robbers, and he's going to outsmart them all. Like, it's a mousetrap kind of a thing, you know? And in parts, it is that movie. But then it's a movie where every time you think you know what's about to happen, no, the fuck you don't. I was stressed out the entire time watching it. I actually think you could call this movie Didn't Breathe if you're talking about the audiences who saw it. Like, it's very tense. Did you think he was ever going to let Cindy go?
No.
Like, I know you said the thing about the murder hole.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he made the murder hole before they made the pact that she would carry his baby, but I don't think he would have let her go. The only thing that makes me doubt that even a little bit is the fact that he doesn't immediately rat Rocky out after. However, I've not seen the second one, so maybe the reason he doesn't rat Rocky out is because he wants to get his revenge on her. Who knows? I don't think he was going to let her go. I don't think if you plan on letting your little person go, that you make a murder hole in your basement.
There wasn't a nursery either. We
Yeah,
never
at least
see a
not that we
nursery.
saw. Yeah.
Yeah. Which that made me wonder, like, was he just, I don't know. Like, what's your plan next? Like, you let her go? You think she's not going to tell somebody? Like, I don't know.
Also,
He
like,
did,
what do you do with the baby? Like, how do you get a social security card for a baby that you've raised
Well,
in your basement?
it definitely didn't seem like he was planning it ahead. And what this actually reminded me of when I started to think through those logistics, do you remember in Ohio, it was like 2013, I think it was Cleveland, a man had kidnapped 3 girls over the course of a couple years and held them hostage for like over a decade. And he
Yes.
impregnated at least 2 of them and had 1 living child. And he just abused them for all those years. But if you read about it, it didn't seem like he had a long-term plan either. He just kept getting away with it. And then eventually they all escaped and he died in prison.
I do remember that. I think I watched a documentary on it actually, and it's really disturbing and sad. But those women are very like brave and strong and went through some crazy stuff to get through that. It also reminds me of the other case, and I don't remember the details of the case, but I remember the movie that it's based off of, Barbarian. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yes.
Which is a wild ride. But that's one where father, I believe, locks his daughter in the basement and impregnates her. And Barbarian takes it like 10 steps farther than that
Yeah.
somehow. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of that one too.
Yeah.
But I do remember that case.
Well, speaking of awful sexual violence and horror movies, so we do have to talk about that scene.
Yes.
In general, though, I mean, we talked about what happened in the movie itself, but in general, Charlie, what do you think about sexual violence as a plot device or a theme in horror movies?
I think that there can be a place for it, but I think most of the time, especially in horror, it's just kind of overdone and grotesque and not used properly. I think now, and I don't know if you saw this, like Shudder recently put out a thing and it's like 1,000 women in horror, and women in horror are starting to like step up and have more of a voice and a role.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, and there was one, and I don't know the director's name, but I know she's a woman, and she directed Promising Young Woman, and I think she did a really good job with that movie where she shows sexual assault and sexual violence in a light and really makes a good like compelling argument around it. And the message is so powerful, and the ending of the movie shook me up so much that it's actually one I won't be able to review it with you because I'll never watch it again, because my adrenaline was pumping. I couldn't sleep that night. Like, that movie just really hit me to my core. So I do think if it's done, there's a place for it, and it can get a message across, and it can be done well. In horror, horror gives you like a way to talk about it, where in a normal movie it might be a little more difficult to talk about it. I don't think Don't Breathe does a great job of exploring that narrative, though. I think it's used more for the shock value, which I have to give it credit for that. I was talking to my husband about this movie, and he was like, have I watched this one with you? And I just said Turkey Baster, and he goes, oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yep.
So it does a good job in providing the shock value, but it doesn't do anything in terms of like not a positive narrative for sexual assault, but like a bringing to the issue of sexual assault. It doesn't do anything to that extent.
Yeah. So Promising Young Woman, it's a 2020 thriller directed by Emerald Fennell. Since you brought it up, I just looked it up really quick to look up the name of the director so we could mention that here. But yeah, I think you and I are largely on the same page. I think horror, almost by definition, needs to explore taboos. Sexual violence is a very real horror, not just women, but especially women face. So
yes,
the idea of just the concepts of sexual violence being present in a horror film or even a major plot point, that's not inherently controversial to me personally. I think it can be part of a good horror movie depending on how they tell the story, but I also agree with you that a lot of horror movies do it in a way that is exploitative, and it can sometimes feel like more of an excuse to watch a woman get brutalized.
yes.
And I don't know if you've had the misfortune of watching Last House on the Left.
Luckily, I have not.
So I went into that one blind. I watched the remake. I think it was like 2009. I didn't know what I was getting into. But you watch a teenager get brutally sexually assaulted, and then you watch her parents, and especially her father, torture and kill the rapist and the accomplices. So you have male violence inflicted on a teenage girl that's an excuse for an expression of more male violence as we watch her father commit just incredible acts of gruesome torture and violence. Yeah, and that's my view. People can disagree, and that's fine, but that's how I see it. A woman by the name of Mary Beth McAndrews did a really interesting article on this type of, there's actually a term for it, a rape revenge film. She contrasts the way that this subject is treated by male directors and how it gets treated by women directors, which I think is to your point about what you said about the Shudder piece about women in horror. I won't get into it here, but I think it's worth a read, and I'll put it in our show notes on our website. So feel free to check that out if you're interested in thinking more deeply about that topic. As for the scene in Don't Breathe, I'm glad they didn't spend a lot of time on it. It was enough to be plenty shocking. So the director got what he wanted out of that. And it was graphic in some elements, like when you realize what that fluid is and what he's going to do and everything about the turkey baster. But I didn't feel like Rocky was being graphically portrayed, so I appreciated that part of it.
That's fair.
I don't know that I would say this is a great way to, explore this topic or spark a conversation or whatever. I don't know about that, but yeah. I appreciate those two things. I will also say it is very interesting to me that the villain boldly claims not to be a rapist while definitely trying to rape Rocky. And it made me think about all the men who downplay sexual assault and say that it doesn't happen or that it happens so rarely or whatever. But it's because, like, when you listen to these guys talk, it becomes very clear that their definition of a sexual assault is basically an evil villain in a ski mask jumping out of the bushes, tackling a woman at night, violently raping her, and then disappearing or murdering her. And if it is anything less than that, then it is not sexual assault. So you can see the blind man justifying his actions. First of all, she owes me. And also, well, this isn't actually rape. It doesn't count, even though it absolutely does.
Right. And I think in the past decade, defining what consent is and then bringing awareness to that it's still a message that's trickling out there to the masses. And I think it's something that's only just people are starting to listen to and understand fully. So there's definitely men who, and not just men, but there's definitely people who don't, define rape and sexual assault correctly.
Oh yes, there's all kinds of influencer women in the manosphere side of things that are happy to spout nonsense like this, but
agreed.
Anyway, I thought it was important that we talk about that concept in general with horror films and specifically to this movie.
Yeah, good discussion.
Yeah. So on to other controversial topics. What did you think about a disabled veteran as a villain? What did you think of that?
Well, so I actually thought at first it takes weird, like when you first start the movie, like I feel like the first half of the movie is so different than the second half. But in the first half of the movie, like I'm almost like rooting for the blind man because it's like, wow, look at this like badass who can do all this stuff despite his disability and is able to fend off 3 people in his home and all that. And it does set you up for some cool scenes, like the basement scene where he levels the playing field and it shows like how advanced he is in his other senses compared to the 2 people who can see. So I thought that was cool. Obviously then the movie takes a turn and you're not rooting for that guy anymore, but it was just a cool thing to explore and not something that's done often. And I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I agree. When I first saw the trailer, I thought this was going to be a movie about, hardcore ex-special forces guy. He might be blind, but he set elaborate traps. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. I'm going to outsmart the robbers. And again, like I said earlier, some of that is definitely true, but it is not how the movie turns out. I should mention the actor himself is not blind, but the contacts that he's wearing, the makeup he's wearing, it obscured almost all of his vision. So when he's filming, he is mostly blind on set. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. I personally thought it was a good choice not to make him a veteran who seemed like he was crazy from PTSD. Like, yeah, he's an injured war veteran, but his issues and what drives him seem to come from the trauma of losing his daughter. Not that that's justified or anything, but that seems to be his motivation. And sure, like maybe his war wounds are a part of that, but the movie did not seem to lean into that as a stereotype. And I mean, Charlie, you and I are both veterans. We are all too familiar with the stereotyping that can occur around PTSD and mental health. So I thought that was interesting. I'm glad they didn't lean into that.
Yeah, I think if anything, this movie used the trope of him being a vet just to like say like, hey, he knows how to shoot a gun. He's still in shape. Like he's not a hopeless blind guy. He's just
Right.
not yeah, I don't know. He has the skill set still. I think is what the vet was, not the PTSD part of it.
Right. I also like that even though he's a veteran and a Purple Heart recipient, the writers didn't try to make him like once you saw who he was and what he was doing, they didn't try to make him more sympathetic or like anything like that. Our culture tends to view military service as synonymous with honor, and Charlie and I both know veterans can be assholes too. You can serve your country with honor and turn out to be a very dishonorable person. So I appreciated that they didn't treat, it wasn't a sacred cow. Like the movie wasn't afraid to be like, yeah, he kind of sucks.
Right.
So
yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, I think I'm done being too serious about the concepts of this movie because I don't want to leave our listeners off with a bummer. So I did find some really cool stuff about the making of it, and I want to talk about that a little bit. The way they designed the set was really interesting. They basically made like a chessboard, but out of the movie, and they plotted every step that each character would take. They drew it out. Like, they drew out all the hallways, all the doors, and then they used action figures to walk through all the movements. So they built the set according to a layout that made sense, and then they designed it around that. So they not only did they have a script, they had a blueprint of the entire movie, and I think that really comes across on screen. The movements are so fluid. The choices each character makes as far as where they move in the house, it feels natural. I didn't find myself screaming, "No, don't go that way."
That's so true. I think that adds to the tension too. Like you said, the way they film it and the tension of the movie, like the fluidity of it all. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I read quite a bit about how the director worked with actors on set, and I know all directors do this to some extent, but I found a couple quotes I thought they're interesting. He gave an interview the director, Fede, he gave an interview in slashfilm.com talking about Stephen Lang, the actor who plays the blind guy. And I want to read the entire thing because it has a lot going on and I think it's delicious. So, quote, "There are two things that made him terrifying on set. He was wearing lenses to make his eyes look like that in the movie, and they would impair 70% of his sight. In low conditions, he couldn't see anything. He didn't have to fake most of the blindness for most of the time. He really couldn't see. When he walked on set, someone was carrying him by the hand, avoiding cables. They would put him on the side, and he would stay there, idle like a character in a video game. I would go over there and piss him off. I'd go and tell him, 'These fucking kids, they're breaking into your house. They're somewhere in your house. You don't know where they are, but they have your money, and that's the last thing you have. And that money is your daughter, man. They're taking the last thing that represents her. I'll be back in a second.' And he was like, 'Fuck them, fuck them, fuck them.' He was just mouthing all these hate words toward them, and then all I had to do was scream action and let the leash go." End quote.
That is crazy. That's really cool. I do think that actually being blind helps with the acting. It's one less thing you don't have to focus on when you're acting. It's something that's actively happening. But the whole screaming or like making him mad, that's nuts. That's really crazy.
Yeah, and you can totally picture it. Like you can picture that guy standing off in the corner idling, just getting madder and madder. I think it's really neat. And if you watch it, you notice the actor is not necessarily like looking in the direction where he hears a noise or something. He's like turning his ear different ways to try to hear what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
In another interview, this one with the AV Club, the director talked about how he loves to defy stereotypes and about the direction he gave Jane Levy, who plays Rocky. Quote, "My direction to her was, be Bruce Willis. Do what a leading man would do. Don't think about the stereotype of what a leading lady would do. In some moments, she's not terrified, when her instinct as an actor would be, well, this is the part I would scream or cry or run away. I was like, no, just be focused. If it was a guy playing your role, he wouldn't be screaming and crying. It would be unacceptable. No leading man would be doing that. So why would a leading lady do it? Don't do it. Just be strong and go for it." End quote.
I love that. I love a good female lead in a movie. And that reminds me of Scarlett in As Above, So Below. The director wanted her to be like strong and smart and not a defenseless woman that just screams and cries the whole time. So
Right. And it's not like she's emotionless or anything like that. Like, she's just being assertive in her actions. Like, she's got a will to live and she wants to complete her mission of robbing this guy. But yeah, she's not cowering or whatever. And it's also interesting to think about the Bruce Willis analogy when you've got that scene of her like crawling through the subfloor. Like,
That was the first thing I thought of too. Die Hard, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have one more note on the director. Based on everything that we've talked about, I want to know, what's your opinion of the director so far?
I don't really know what my thoughts on him are. He's clearly smart and he knows how to write a movie, and he loves a good a twist. He loves a twist ending. But besides that, I don't know what my thoughts are.
Do you know what else he loves?
What?
Metal music.
Does he really?
He does. He and his co-writer in this, Frodo Seaguas, they were in a heavy metal band together for 10 years. That's how they know each other.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to look them up and listen
I
to
could
it.
not find it. I looked everywhere. You
Dang
probably
it.
have better sources. But Fede is from, I think they're both from Uruguay. So I don't know if you know anybody in like the metal scene in Uruguay, but maybe they can clue us in into.
No, I only really know like European metal. No South American. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, maybe you'll have better luck than I. I just think it's interesting that we keep stumbling across these heavy metal ties.
I think I said it before, but heavy metal and horror go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Yes, which is why we are besties.
Yes.
And then one more thing, it's just a little Easter egg. I actually don't know if it's 100% true. I read it several places, but I'm not sure. But supposedly the safe combo is Fede's birthday.
Well, that's funny. I mean,
Yeah.
well, if anyone were to break into his house, that's the combo I would use to get his.
Yeah. Yeah. Not very smart to put that on the internet, but whatever.
No.
So like, I have your birthday, but I can't figure out what metal band you were in. Okay.
Yeah, right?
All right. So that brings us to our final stamp on the episode. What is this? Is it a horror movie? A sad movie? Is it something else?
It's a traditional like horror meets thriller, I would say. It's certainly not sad. Yeah, my vote's horror meets thriller. What's yours?
Yeah, definitely horror. I would agree with horror thriller as well. This is when I talk about what makes good horror, this is one of the movies I bring up specifically because of how stressed I am the entire time I'm watching it. And I know it's got its haters, especially giving that incredibly disturbing twist, and I get it, but it's definitely horror. It's very competently filmed and shot, and the story is solid, and so I think it's good horror. So yeah, definitely horror.
I mean, I agree. It's definitely tense. The first time I watched it, it was super tense. The second time, I was much more relaxed and could pay attention to the details, but it's a good horror. All right. Well, that does it for us today. Listeners, may the horrors persist.
But don't rob anyone blind. Thanks for listening to Horror Sandbox. For show notes, credits, and contact information, check out our website at www.horrorsandbox.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Horror Sandbox. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with all the horror fans in your life.
What's that?